Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Blade II Bannerlord. Today we're going to be doing something quite different. We're going to be doing a guide on workshops, how they work, which ones to choose, and which ones are best for you and your playthrough. We get a lot of questions about these. Some people can find it very confusing and very difficult to actually make a decision and make a choice on which workshop to buy and which production to start choosing. There's a lot of ways we can clear this up. We're going to get to those in a minute. First things first. Basically, I'm going to run through the basics. So what is a workshop? A workshop is a shop, literally a workshop that you can buy in towns and large settlements. You can buy these in literally any of the towns around the game, any single town located on the map you can buy a workshop. You can usually buy one or two, maybe even three in a single town. Some of them have more, some towns have less, but you will always be able to find an available workshop. One thing you need to consider, one pretty major thing you have to consider before buying a workshop is where you're buying it. And there's multiple reasons for this. One, you want to make sure that you're not buying in a city that could potentially be taken over or attacked by another faction. So see Ortizia here, if we bought a workshop here, we're at pretty big risk in the long term of war with the Azerai. And if we did have a war with them against the Empire, one of the first settlements they would attack and take would be Ortizia. Now that would mean that we would lose our workshop there and our profits would be massively reduced because of the war around Ortizia. So we've got to take that into consideration. So maybe if we're looking at buying one within the Western Empire, we want to buy one that's a little bit more in the middle, in the centre, somewhere that's quite far away from the border of another empire. We just want to have a look at which is the safest. So maybe Jaun Maris might be one of the safest ones that we could go for because it's nice and centered. So that's one of the first things. The second is you want to make sure that you're not buying a workshop with a faction you're intending on going to war with at some point in the near future, because again they will cut off all of your profits from that workshop and you will lose essentially what is a decent chunk of money. The main cost of a workshop is usually around about 11,000 to just over 15,000 depending on where you're buying. Some settlements they're going to be cheaper because they're not going to give you as much of a profit margin, whereas others are going to be more expensive because they can offer just that extra little bit of profit. So again, that's another thing to consider, whether or not you're able to pay more. Obviously, if you're very early game, you're going to go for those cheaper ones because it's still going to give you a profit, still going to reduce your wages, give you an income. So it doesn't really matter, and you can always get rid of it and then buy a better one in the future. So those are the first things you need to consider, and once you've got that a good idea of where you want to go, the next major thing that you want to take into account is what is being produced around the settlement. So we can do this either just by looking at the villages and seeing, is this connected to Ortizia? Yes it is, it's bound to Ortizia. What's it producing? Okay, so that's producing silver ore. Another way, much quicker and easier, we can just right click on the name of the town there, and then we can have a look down at the bottom and just see which villages are bound to it and what are they producing. So we have grain, salt and silver. So just from that information, guys, we know that we can build a brewer that uses grain. I don't think there's anything that we can use the salt for, but we can also build a silversmith using silver there. So we have those two options. The reason that we can pick those two, the reason that we're allowed to build those buildings because they're being produced, is it means that the incoming resources are going to be cheaper to our workshops. So our brewer is going to use grain, and we know that grain is produced in a nearby village. So that village is going to sell its grain to Ortizia for a much cheaper price than anywhere else because it is bound to the town. So we know that grain is going to be cheap here, and they're going to have a lot of it because they produce it here. So that means that when we are trying to buy product like items to then produce the beer from, it's going to be cheap, meaning that we have more profits because we're not using as much of the money to buy the grain. So that's one thing we can consider. Another thing a lot of people don't realise and know about is that actually castles that are nearby each of the towns, their villages are also connected to the nearest town to that castle. So in Ortizia's case it would be Garantor Castle. It could also be this one here, but we're not sure because that could also be connected to Lagata. But yes, so the way it works is the nearest castles to that settlement, their villages are going to be connected as well, which gives us the addition of another salt and saddle horse. So that's just one of like the basic run through of how to choose a workshop. Ideally, you just want to have a look at the major resources being produced in the area. So now we're actually going to go into Ortizia and go and purchase our first workshop. See, we've got enough money, we've got nearly 20,000, which guarantees that we can afford however much it's going to cost it. So we're just going to go into the city. One thing we can do is we can press take a walk to the town centre. You know, that's going to usually put us outside of the city and cause us to walk in. A much quicker way to do this, guys, and I really recommend it. It just saves you a couple of seconds, even a minute maybe, just to get in. Just go ahead and click on one of the guys at the top, click on visit, and it will send you straight to them. So you'll be right in the middle of the city anyway, so you really won't have to travel far, and even on some of the cases they'll put you inside of the workshops. So we can just say I'm whatever, and then we'll go I leave now. So we're in the middle of the settlement, we don't have to do that annoying little walk in. It usually takes longer than we like. And yeah, so another thing that a lot of people miss and don't know about is if you hold down left alt, we get to see all of the key locations within the village or settlement that we're in. So we can see that there's a tannery, a smithy, and a brewer. So what we can do is we'll head over to that brewer, because we know that they produce grain here, so a brewery is going to be a very good option of something that we can buy. So if we head over to that, get in there and see how much it's going to cost us. One thing you guys need to really consider is you don't have to change the production of a workshop that you're buying. You never have to change it. You can just buy a workshop and keep it as it is. So if we go over to this shop worker, say I'd like to buy this workshop, it's going to cost us just under 15,000. Yes, I'll happily buy it. And it's going to give us this whole list of other things that we could instead buy, but we don't want any of these other options. We want to stick and keep the brewer, because we know they're producing grain here. Yeah, see, mere grain is taken and brewed into beer. We know they're producing grain here, so it's nice and cheap, and it's going to give us a good profit. It's one of the best things that we could build here, because it's going to offer us the best profits margins. So we'll go ahead and we'll take the brewery. That is now ours. Another little thing to consider before you go ahead and buy is just make sure we've bought the brewery here. Make sure there isn't another one in the town. If there is, obviously that's going to take away from the profits of your one, so it's going to be a lot more competitive and most likely give you a lot less money. So make sure you either buy the brewery or don't make one if there is already one. Just make sure you check and make sure there isn't one already. So yeah, we can go ahead and leave now. What I'm going to do, guys, in the description below, I'm going to put a list of all of the resources. So like the silver ore, the grain, every resource that is produced by a village, I'm going to put down in the description below, and then I'm going to put down what they turn into. So what you can choose depending on which resource is available to you. So if there's one for grain, I'll make sure that down there I'll put grain equals or whatever brewery. So that's what you want to go for. I'll put that down in the description below, guys, so you can have a look at that, play with that, and use that if you need to as your list when referring to what you'd like to build. But yeah, we can go ahead and if we leave, we should start seeing a profit. Another thing you have to consider is when you first buy that workshop, the profits aren't going to come rolling in. You're not going to make 100 straight away. It does slowly build up, but usually it starts very low. So you'll only see about 20, 30, 40, but over time it will gradually build up and up and up, and you'll start looking at between 100 to 300. I think 300 is about the max. But yeah, that's what you're generally looking at. So instantly we've got 40. That's on our first day. That should start building up over time, and we should start seeing more and more of that coming in. Yeah, see, it's already jumped up to about 70 there. So as each turn goes on, that's just going to hopefully keep climbing. Don't be scared if it starts going down, guys. That doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. That's just the way the market works. Obviously, the market is always changing. The economies are always changing in every single faction and settlement within the game. There we go. It's gone up to 90, so we're nearly at 100 already, and we're only 3 turns in. So we know we've picked the right one. But yeah, again, don't be scared if it's not building up as fast as mine is here. It's just the game. It will get there eventually. Sometimes it can just take a little bit longer. Sometimes it can drop massive chunks first and then go up. But you're not doing anything wrong. That's just the game. And that's just how it works. So we're at 112 there. So it's going up a little bit slower now. might start dropping down again, but we know that we have a major income there. Again, it's usually found that in the settlements in the middle you'll find the more expensive workshops, and in the factions on the outskirts of the maps where the cheap ones are. It doesn't really have that much of an effect on the profits you'll make. It's just something to bear in mind. The ones in the Empire are usually a little bit more secure. But yeah, ultimately that is the main guide to workshops, guys. If you have any more questions on them, please let me know. There's nothing else I can think of at the moment to say more on it. That is just the basics of how they work. It's not overly complicated. Everyone looks at it and thinks it's to do, you know, you can go really complicated with it. You can look at what's being demanded in the market and just play it on that. But ultimately, you don't need to do that, guys. You just look at the nearby villages, see what's being produced, get a rough idea, and then go ahead and use that, and that will give you some good profits. So again, you don't have to worry about it too much. When the game starts, obviously, you can only have one workshop if you're less than clan tier 1, and it usually goes up +1 every tier. So it is quite slow to build up a workshop empire, but you can do it. It's absolutely viable. You can absolutely do it, no worries. But you do have to take into consideration that you can only have one per clan tier that you've gone up. So if we're clan tier 2, we should be able to have 2. Or 3 actually, I think, because we start on clan tier 0, so I think if you're clan tier 2 you do get 3. But that's just another thing to take into consideration. So make sure you make the right ones initially. But don't worry about it. It says level here. I don't think that's actually a function within the game. If that's something that you've been looking at, we're not allowed to level them up yet, but I think that's something coming in the future. I think that's something that developers are looking into and looking at, and we could potentially see workshop leveling where they get better and hopefully produce more profits over time, even reduce their wages. And one last thing to consider is your perks and skill points. Now, I haven't assigned anything on me that impacts or changes the workshops, but you can get skills that do that. So if we have a look at this, your shops have 20% less upkeep. Now that's only at level 50 on trade, so we can reduce how much we're paying our staff at each workshop, so therefore increasing the profits. So again, don't be worried, you won't be stuck at certain amounts. You will be able to get loads of different perks in all different sorts of trees. It's not just the trade tree. I think there's things in stewardship, engineering. All the other trees will have something linked to the workshops as well. There's loads of really good little perks you can get for it. So you can constantly improve it. You're not stuck at a certain point. They will get better as you increase your abilities. That's pretty much it for workshops, guys. If I haven't answered any of your questions, let me know down in the comments below and I will make sure I answer them for you. I will do another video on caravans and explain how they work and who's best to use with them as well. How you can get your best profits out of them, and you can really make a lot of money out of caravans. You can make massive and massive amounts of money from them if you do it correctly. So I will walk through that in the next guide. Other than that, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope this has helped. I hope this helps bring you some profits and builds you a nice little trade empire. If you've got any suggestions, any tips or any questions, let me know down in the comments below. Please get active down there. If this has helped you out, let me know as well. I'll be brilliant, really happy to hear it. I really hope this helped, guys. You know, I want to see this do some good. But other than that, guys, that's all I've got to say for today. Hope you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next one. I will get another guide out very soon and explain some more aspects of how the game works. But yeah, thanks guys for watching. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.